The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the individual co-host and do not reflect the official policy or position of the Firearms Radio Network and or their employers. Viewer discretion is advised. This is especially true on our live shows.
Broadcast for shooters, hunters, and gun enthusiasts. This is the Firearms Radio Network. The bandwidth for this episode of This Week in Guns is sponsored by Patriot Patch Company. PatriotPatch.co.
Welcome to This Week in Guns. This show is brought to you by the Firearms Radio Network and Patriot Patch Company.
And this show offers commentary on the latest firearms industry news, information, and buzz. I'm your host, Sean Herron, and our panelists are some of my favorites. As always, first up, we've got the co-founder and VP of Hold My Guns, mental health advocate on her Instagram, Beyond the Unknown, and you may have seen her on the Gun Collective. Welcome back, Genevieve Jones.
Hi, thanks for having me, Sean.
Glad to have you here. And next up, you guys just met, actually, but next up, one of my faves, veteran Second Amendment advocate, professional rabble-rouser, author of American Insurgent, and host of the Matter of Facts podcast, Bill Rabelais. How's it going, man?
Doing good, man. Thanks for having me back.
Glad to have you both. It's funny because, I don't know, I don't love this show because the news is like, it's kind of depressing, like often, right? Like, I'm not a huge fan of the show. I absolutely love talking to you guys about the news. So it's like this crazy paradigm that I just don't understand. But anyway, I hope everyone out there listening likes it. Go check out the Patriot Patch Company. PatriotPatch.co is where you can get their Patch of the Month Club and all kinds of other stuff. And Second Call Defense, we'll talk about a lot of self-defense stories in the show. And having some kind of insurance to cover you should the worst ever happen is not a bad idea, and it's incredibly inexpensive, anywhere between $10 and $40 a month. Firearmsradio.tv/SCD is where you can find out more. This should come as a surprise to nobody, but Virginia gun store owner says that sales are way up and many buyers opting to pay in cash. I don't even need to read the story because the headline is absolutely enough to figure out what's going on. He said, we haven't had gun sales this good and ammo sales this good since Obama was the president. And I'm like, all right, well, that says a thing. Genevieve, I'm going to start off with you. Does this surprise you at all?
No, not even a little bit. I mean, every time that people freak out about something, you see a rise in gun sales. And, you know, when I used to work at gun stores, it was such a positive thing and such a negative thing at the same time. It's such a weird balance. I think people should just buy guns all the time and lots of them. But I'm happy that they're having business. It sucks what's going on in that state right now, though.
Yep. Phil, paying cash. Why?
I don't know, Sean. There'd be no real reason to pay in cash unless they were concerned about their constitutional rights and their privacy being violated by a government run amok that was going to subpoena all the 4473s to determine who had all the scary black rifles at a future date. But our government would never do anything like that. That would be wrong. And illegal and immoral and unconstitutional and a complete violation of everybody's rights. They would never do that. So I don't know why they're paying in cash. No earthly idea.
It's crazy. I just don't understand it. I
don't either, man.
This is not a surprise. Over 90% of the counties in Virginia have now adopted sanctuary city, sanctuary county resolutions and things like that. So it's not a surprise at all. Virginia people love their freedom. Their flag, Sic Semper Tyrannis. It is a citizen with a rifle standing on the body of a tyrant.
Ironic, isn't it?
It is irony at its finest. They've already popped off 2 revolutions. I don't know. Will Virginia be the place that we see the third, Genevieve?
Possibly. I'm ready to help if it is.
Yeah, it's a crazy time in Virginia. Next 2 stories also about Virginia. NRA promises a strong presence in Virginia at the first hearing, and the story directly after that. NRA town hall in Virginia is filled with first-time gun activists. So this is great. I know we give the NRA crap. I'm not saying that this is the best thing in the universe, but for them to finally be getting involved in Virginia, maybe they were working behind the scenes. Now that's failed and they've moved to public. I don't know. I'm not saying anything. All I know is that this is good news, right? Like we have this organization that a lot of people are members of, and now they're finally pushing and lobbying and doing the things that they need to do in Virginia if they haven't been doing it already. Bill, I'll start with you. Do we care? Is it too late for the NRA, or is this a good thing?
This is like the NRA, the National Rifle Association, right?
Yes.
The same bunch of boomerish fuds who were totally okay with the bump stock ban, the same group that were involved in seeing the Hughes Amendment passed under the guise of we'll get it back later. That NRA, right? The NRA, Wayne LaPierre, that NRA, Chris Cox.
Right there. Yep.
Okay.
Well, not Chris Cox.
I don't care. I don't give a damn.
Chris Cox he was too honest. They had to get rid of him.
Okay. That's a high bar to clear for the NRA. I don't give a damn about the NRA. I really don't. I've given them multiple chances. I used to be an NRA member. I've given second chances. I've given third chances. I'm done with them. I don't care if they're in Virginia. I don't care. I just don't care. Because at this point, they've been such an amazing steward of their members' money up to this point. I just think they're to do some fundraising. And I have no faith in their intentions at this stage. That's probably really harsh. It may even be unfair, but it's me. I just don't care. The thing that I find frustrating in moments like this is the fact that there are still people out there who think if you vote and throw money at the NRA, this problem will go away. And the truth of the matter is, we had me and a group of friends had this discussion the other day, but at the end of the day, this is going to come down to people who are willing to go to freaking prison, undergoing civil disobedience and uncivil disobedience, who say, no, I'm not going to have my rights taken from me. It's going to come to that. And as long as we're throwing money at the National Rifle Association, an organization that should die a graceful death and clear the way for another organization who will stand up for our rights, who will not be compromised, and who will not chase the dollar, until that happens, we're just seeing people who could be making a difference with their time and their money, throwing money at a dinosaur that's not doing any good.
Strong message, Phil. I like it. Genevieve, what do you think?
I want to be proven wrong, by the way. I really do.
Oh, I know.
But I haven't been so far.
Genevieve?
First of all, Phil, I want to commend you on your use of throwing money at an old dinosaur. I really enjoyed that. Sean, do you know when the first hearing is supposed to be?
Let's see. Well,
because it hasn't happened yet, right?
I don't believe so. So hundreds of first-time pro-gun activists flood NRA town hall in Virginia. So that was the town hall. And then they're trying to get people to show up to the first hearing. And I don't see a date. I will say the lobby day is January 20th.
Okay.
So for people to show up at that is very important. Get involved with the VCDL to find out more about that. Although there's some drama going on there because the VCDL is like, hey, show up, dress nice, don't be open carrying and wearing plate carriers and stuff like that. And 2A advocates and some of the threeper groups and things like that are like, no, I'm going to have my open carry AR and my plate carriers and my Crypt Tech and my M81 God's Plaid. And
how far has quiet and polite gotten us so far?
Yes.
I mean, you and I had this conversation about a year ago now. I honestly, I don't want to see this come to blows, but I am of the mind that like the time for polite and quiet has probably passed. It's time to get loud and it's time to start screaming. It's time to get in people's face about this, because this is coming to a head because we've spent all these years trying to be polite and trying not to hurt people's feelings and trying to be likable. I don't have to be likable. I'm right. We have a right to keep and bear arms. We don't have to beg for it. We don't have to plead for it. We don't have to convince the other side. We don't. We have it. The question is, are you prepared to fight for it? I'd like to do that on the soapbox and the ballot box, if at all humanly possible.
Right.
But it's come to that. It's time to get in people's face. And if we have to make people nervous, we have to make people nervous. If you have to walk around and play carrots, get the point across, do it and let people freak out about it. Because you can't ignore it at that point.
I want to revisit that in just one moment. Genevieve, it's January 13th.
Okay, cool. The only reason I asked that is because it says that the NRA promises something. And to me, I think that I don't want to form. I mean, I do agree with Phil. I don't really care either. One of my favorite quotes is, "No one is coming, it's up to us." And I genuinely believe that. I do think that it will be, we have to kind of wait and see if they actually do anything. I don't necessarily believe that they're actually going to do anything. So we don't really have any evidence one way or another yet because it hasn't happened yet. So we kind of got to wait and see. I mean, if I'm betting my cards, I'm going to say they're probably not going to do much, if anything. And it's going to be up to us. Yeah,
it could be. I know a lot of their grassroots has kind of gone by the wayside. Their NRA board of directors members that were super involved in my opinion, extremely effective at grassroots left because they had enough and it was not worth it for them anymore. And I think that's, that's the state of things as it goes here. Speaking of Lobby Day on January 20th, anyone out there should definitely go, even if you live outside the state and it's within driving distance, and you can go show up, make sure you understand reciprocity there and everything like that. Normally, I am not an open carry AR full kit kind of guy. Normally, I'm like, you know what? If soccer mom Karen is there, it's going to freak her out. She's going to talk to the news because she's got her bob haircut and she's going to get on the news. And this is a battle of propaganda and we will lose that battle. But like Phil said, sometimes I think that it is very important to have a show of arms. And I think that maybe in this case, showing up there legally, carrying those things like AR-15s and things like that, we have seen the sanctuary counties and sanctuary cities and things like that in the Commonwealth. And I think that maybe a show of we have had enough and we're not going to take it anymore. I don't say this often, but in this case might be appropriate. What I really don't think is that it's a great thing for all of these gun owners in the state to be kind of fighting back and forth. Like, let them do what they're going to do as long as everybody's safe, smart, responsible, polite, and doing the right things. I think that's fine. Fight when you need, fight with your words and your mind other than that. But yeah, Genevieve, I don't know. Would you go in a plate carrier with an AR, or would you just dress in like business cash with maybe an open carry pistol on your hip?
I mean, I would open carry a pistol. I would never open carry an AR in a plate carrier, not because I think it's the wrong thing to do, just because that's not something that I would ever do, like, period. So I'm more comfortable with just open carrying a pistol. I do think with the whole debate, I think you and I have talked about this before, Sean, with the whole, is it, a good idea to open carry at these things? Is it a bad idea? And I fully support open carry, because if we start saying that we shouldn't be doing that in public, then we're sort of deterring people who might not be of age yet from carrying a firearm out in the open. And if we want to lower the age to be able to, bear arms, then we need to be okay with people open carrying, because we're singling them out and being contradictory to ourselves if we don't.
Yeah. And I don't open carry. I mean, I open carry. So I recently got my FFL and now I open carry because my address is public and, there's bad people who want to do bad things. So I open carry at the office now. But generally I would open carry at the range and things like that. Other than that, I don't want people to know that I carry. I definitely ascribe to gray man to a point. I wear like shooting shirts every single day, but I don't want to just, I don't have that out there. I see them all the time. I have no problem with it whatsoever, but yeah. I think in this case, I'm 100% okay with it. I'm okay with it anyway, but I think in this case, it might be a good prescription. Now, Phil,
I'm kind of okay with it either way. I guess where I get frustrated, because I've seen this charge be levied recently, I get really fired up about the guys who say that the open carriers, quote, make us look bad, or the guys that show up in kit make us look bad, or the guys with a certain kind of rifle make us look bad. The only person that's making the gun community look really bad right now is the gun community itself. Because we have no regard or respect for each other. It's, if you don't have the rifle I like, made by the company I like, if you don't carry it the way I approve, if you don't wear the stuff I approve of, every little step along the way, any little aspect of our individuality, we use as an excuse to tear each other apart. And I can't get on board with that. I mean, I have my own opinions. Personally, I'm an open carry advocate. Not because I think it's appropriate in all situations, but because I think you should have the right to do it if you deem it necessary. And in certain situations, it's perfectly appropriate to open carry. Handguns, long guns, whatever. I mean, call it what it is. When I was down here during Hurricane Katrina, we had homeowners who were standing in their front lawns with rifles slung over their backs. And that was absolutely a show of force, so that the people who were 2 blocks over robbing somebody got the hint. You don't want to be down here fooling around. You're going to get shot. There are times when it's perfectly appropriate to open carry, and it's perfectly appropriate to open carry a long gun. And I just want everybody to have the freedom and the space to decide for themselves, is this that time? That's why I get frustrated with this, because to me, it's like, it's not about whether or not you agree with it or think it's a good idea or gray man or whatever else. It's a question, does that person have the right to do it? And if you say he doesn't, you're not a Second Amendment advocate. You can't be, because you don't agree with the right to carry. The minute you take one step off the ledge of, I don't think that should be legal, get on the other side of the line. You're not a Second Amendment advocate in my eyes. You have to toe the line in the Second Amendment and say you have the right to keep and bear arms and carry as you see fit, and let it lie.
I agree with that. I make my own personal choices. I let other people make their own personal choices, and live and let live. As long as they're not hurting me or mine, I really don't care what they do.
That's how freedom works. You got to defend somebody doing something you absolutely despise with the same fervor you defend your own rights. Because if you don't, you're a hypocrite.
I mean, I keep this. This is my office gun. It is locked and loaded, and it sits next to me all day long at the office. Like, you never know what's going to happen.
I'm not as cool as you.
I mean, I've got my SIG P365 too.
Hey, there we go.
Sitting right here, but I keep this like whatever room I'm in the office. Like I said, address is public now. FFL, people assume FFLs have guns. And so, yeah, I've got this. Also, no one mocked my flashlight. I'm waiting for the Arasaka Defense mount. It's just held on with Velcro right now. It's not my fault. Bill, you said, look, we've got the right to bear arms, the right to keep and bear arms. We've already got it. We don't need to explain it. We don't need to pussyfoot around it. We've already got that. Well, the truth about guns actually posits that the Virginia situation is a direct result of SCOTUS not defending the Heller decision, which was that 2008? Yes, 2008. The Epic Heller decision.
I believe so.
McDonald in 2010, which applied Heller to the states. And because they haven't seen any other cases, there's quite a few that are going right now that want to be heard by the Supreme Court. But because they haven't applied that to other cases. They haven't they haven't taken the precedent that they themselves set and applied it to these other cases. It allows stupid things like Virginia. I think that's actually very interesting. So there's 4 cases pending consideration by the Supreme Court involving the question of whether or not the Second Amendment applies outside the home. And I think if they heard one of those cases, we wouldn't see a lot of stuff like this in Virginia. Let me see who. I don't normally look at T-Tag because I don't care. It's written by Teresa Einacker. But I thought that this was kind of very interesting. Genevieve, I'll start with you. Does the Supreme Court need to hear more of these gun cases? And if so, do you think that stops things like Virginia from even happening?
You know, I read that article and I'm kind of undecided as to whether it will help or not. My ending thought was, how am I supposed to expect them to honor something like the Heller decision when they can't even honor the Constitution, which is our natural human rights? So they're ignoring something like that, and it doesn't surprise me that they would ignore something like the Heller decision as well. So where I want to say, yes, it would be helpful for them to hear those cases, I still think that they're going to have a personal and biased agenda anyway. True.
Now, Phil, I almost think that maybe your pen name, your pseudonym might be Teresa Einacker, because let me read the last couple of paragraphs. So long as the court fails to act in any of these cases, extremists will remain unchecked, continuing to infringe the Second Amendment rights of lawful gun owners. Gun control proponents are laser focused on constitutional gun owners and will pursue their civilian disarmament agenda until we're all plunged into chaos. So long as those extremists go unchecked, we will be off balance. The only way to avert this powder keg situation is for the Supreme Court to finally act and to rule unequivocally in favor of the Second Amendment proponents. This is not just rhetoric. There can be no compromises. This right is not negotiable. Thoughts?
Well, first of all, I'm not Teresa Einacker, or however you pronounce her name. That ain't me. I don't disagree that the Supreme Court really needs to take a firm stand on the Second Amendment, but I hate to use Heller as the decision to preach from the stump for, because even Heller doesn't honor the Second Amendment. Heller, in ruling on Heller, as much as a lot of people hail it as a victory for us, the truth of the matter is it's not, because in the decision, they clearly stated that the right to keep and bear arms while individual was not unlimited. And that's not right. Second Amendment clearly says that the right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. To infringe means to limit, to abridge, to delay, a whole host of things. So when you say it's not an unlimited right, Heller's decision was wrong. And a lot of people don't even stop and think about that. They're so focused on the fact that, we won one, but you didn't. Because if Heller was really a win, then Scalia and everybody else would have shouted from the rooftops, it is an individual, unlimited right, and they'd have shredded all gun control laws on the state books right then and there. But it didn't happen that way. Here we are 11 years later, and yes, we're seeing this continued creeping movement towards more and more gun control, but it's because Heller was ruled the way it was, because they stated it's not an unlimited law, or it's not an unlimited right. Because of that, we're where we are today. So while I agree Supreme Court has to get involved and they need to do their due diligence, and I argue that judicial review, the ability of them to pick and choose what cases they hear, is probably partially responsible for this. The truth of the matter is, when they ruled in Heller, they ruled wrong. And we are still suffering from that ruling, and we're going to continue to suffer from that ruling. But this isn't a new phenomenon. I mean, we took one in the teeth in 1968. We took one in the teeth in 1934. Every gun control law that's ever been on the books has been an abridgment of the Second Amendment. The problem is we are this many years into this process, and we're just now trying to slam on the brakes when the freight train's been barreling down the tracks for 100 years. So what I tell people at a moment like this is, yes, we absolutely need the Supreme Court to get their butt in gear, but they have to rule according to the Second Amendment, which is law of the land. And if they come back and they say it's not an unlimited right, they've screwed us all over again.
Yeah. A lot of times, honestly, Supreme Court accepting a case makes me extremely nervous. Will it go our way or will it not go our way? I don't know. That's some of those 4 cases, and even New York Rifle and Pistol Association versus the state of New York right now for intrastate transfer of firearms legally owned. Yeah. It's a big one, and it has far-reaching results depending on how they rule.
Well, but here's something to think about for a second. We're sitting here talking about how the Supreme Court could be our savior in this. They could put their foot down. They could say what the Second Amendment says. They could force states to abide by it. Cool. What happens if they go the other direction?
Oh, yeah.
Because here's the thing of it. Let's go back to 1776. The king, the crown, says, all you damn colonists don't get to have your guns anymore. Parliament agrees with him. Their courts agree with him. Do we still have the right to keep and bear arms at that point, even though every facet of our government has said no? Or do we still have them because we say we still have them? So at a certain point, my argument becomes, pass all the laws you want. We don't care.
Yeah. When the crown wanted to take away the guns, we had them because we said we had them. And then later on, they had the Constitution Bill of Rights. So why put our faith in the Supreme Court when we should be putting our faith in ourselves? Because we dictate what happens in this country. We are the people. The people have the power. There's 320 million of us. If we say we get to keep our guns, we're keeping our guns. Viva la revolution.
I don't want it to come to that, bub. At a moment like this, I love to bring up JFK. And JFK is not always my favorite president, but the man was really brilliant in a couple of respects. But he very plainly said that he who makes peaceful revolution impossible makes violent revolution inevitable. So what I would posit to people today is, if you continue to push this to the point where gun owners cannot peacefully pursue their rights, you are pushing people into a corner, and someone is going to respond. And it's not going to be pretty when it happens. I don't want to see it happen in this country. But they're pushing people into a corner, and a cornered animal is a dangerous one.
True that.
Somebody said Phil Rabley for POTUS 2020. I'd get assassinated 6 seconds after I got confirmed.
Oh, man. Washington Post gives Nancy Pelosi 4 Pinocchios. So here's the thing. When the Washington Post... So first off, what did she actually say? She's been using a bunch of bogus claims of gun deaths. She said in the 266 days since we sent this bill, about 25,000 people have died from gun violence in our country. 47% of them teenagers or children younger than that. She said on November 20th, 2019. Fact checkers, and this was published in the Washington Post. Well, we already know they're not very accurate at the Washington Post because I was in an article called the heavily armed millennials of Instagram. So clearly they lost all credibility right there. However, Washington Post said none of those things are true. Actually, her statistics are wrong and dumb and not even remotely correct. People said that she may have misunderstood and it was 7 instead of 47, but really she's just lying and she's wrong. And we see this constantly. Genevieve, someone that has a platform this huge and just constantly lies to the public and people buy it and reelect her over and over. Is this not one of the greatest travesties of our political system?
Oh, well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, at this point, nothing really surprises me anymore. So it's almost humorous at this point. I mean, it's really sad that people fall for this stuff. I mean, I there's people who are in my family who are very liberal and disagree with just about everything that I say, and I've heard them defend her before. And it's just the logic. It doesn't make any sense. And I've tried really, really hard to figure out why they believe the things that they do, and none of it makes sense to me. So you go down this whole rabbit hole of like, how are people this gullible, and how are people this willing to just be sheep and not stand up for themselves ever? And I think people are just so afraid to think about anything other than, social media and cat videos and their terrible job working as a receptionist or whatever, that they don't want to think about all this stuff. I think, to Phil's point too, the government does a really good job of just giving this illusion of power to us. Like they're going to fix everything if we just get out and vote, and it's all in our hands, and all we have to do is make a decision about who we want to run our country and the laws that we want to go into effect. And I don't think any of it matters. I don't think any of it is real. It's just to keep people in their place. And seeing somebody with as big of a platform as Nancy Pelosi just take advantage of people like that, to me, just confirms it. And people are easy to be hurted.
So very true. Phil, what are your thoughts on that? I mean, I know we're not surprised, right, that she's lying and having false truth and getting called out for it by the WP. That's interesting.
I mean, even a broken watch is right twice a day. And to give Nancy some the benefit of doubt, I have tried really hard to see things from her point of view, but I have these things called shoulders, and they prevent me from getting my head that far at my behind to be able to see things from her perspective. That said, the fact that she continues to get voted back in office is almost enough to make a hardcore libertarian like myself start to think maybe a dictatorship's the way to go. I mean, maybe the voters aren't smart enough to manage their own country. I don't know, losing faith. At the end of the day, though, the thing that really binds me up is just simply the fact that they continue to beat the drum about it's all for the children, it's to save the children. And how many times have we said over and over and over that, I mean, if you really break the statistics down, the majority of these gun violence deaths, the majority of them are suicide. And if you take those and everything connected with the narco economy, because the war on drugs was a really great idea, guys, if you take all that out of the equation, the numbers fall to statistical anomaly in a country of 320 million people. I'm not saying that a death is not significant. It's horrible and it should be avoided when possible. What I'm saying is that more people die in this country from freaking heart disease, diabetes. They die from eating fatty foods and eating too much damn sugar. Yet this woman's going to sit there and screech and yell about an unconstitutional infringement on an inalienable right.
And she loves tragedy too. I mean, you have to when your whole campaign is based off of how many children died. I mean, did you guys see those commercials that they made where the kids are getting ready to go back to school and they're like hiding behind their binders because there's like a school shooter, and like the one girl's on her phone with her mom like, "Oh, I love you, mommy." It's like, what? Why would you do that? You're just marketing and making your point off of the death of innocent people. That's sick.
You know, what's sick is that there was another time in history where emotions and the lives of children were used to justify incredibly horrible treatment towards citizenry and people. And it was like 1930s Germany. And I make that analogy shamelessly, even though it really upsets people. I hope you're upset about it. You should be upset. You should be upset that one of your politicians is behaving like a Nazi.
True that.
And it's not Trump.
Right. That's a very important distinction to have there. Speaking of, Trump favors the Second Amendment this week and praises church hero Jack Wilson. Speaking before a crowd of 5,000 people at a Miami megachurch on Friday evening, President Donald Trump, publicly praised Jack Wilson, the church member and deacon of security at the West Freeway Church of Christ in White Settlement, Texas, who shot and killed an attacker. He says, where is it specifically here? Because it's very important that I read his quote. God, where is it? A few days ago, a murderer opened fire during service at a church near Fort Worth, Texas. We are grateful that the shooting was over in 6 seconds. And do you know why? Because we had someone who had a gun going in the other direction. You had 242 people, worshipers. They were praying, and this maniac walked in and started shooting. But you had a man who had a gun who knew how to use it. And in a very short period of time, that was the end. Then he goes on to say, if he wouldn't have been there, all the people would have died. I'm paraphrasing. And then these people talk about guns and gun safety and gun rights. And honestly, they don't really know what they're talking about, but many lives were saved. Your Second Amendment is under siege, bigly, but I guess this is why they don't love me. Look, there are so many reasons. This is one of many, but as long as I'm here, I'm going to be here for a long time. Your Second Amendment is protected. What? Genevieve, does this shock you? Or like, what is it going on in my life? Is this real life?
I mean, I watched him call for red flag laws nationwide. I watched it and I was furious, like absolutely enraged. I went on like more rants than I have ever gone on in my entire life. I watched this happen, and now he's saying that as long as he's in office, our Second Amendment is going to be protected. No, that's crap. I don't believe it at all.
Yeah, I'm like, wait a minute. This sounds very familiar to me because I'm pretty sure he said those exact words previously, and that has not been the case at this point. Now, for me, I will absolutely vote for Trump again for a couple different reasons, mainly the makeup of the Supreme Court, which I want to be as heavily canted towards freedom as possible, or at least constitutional judgments based on the actual Constitution. But I would not say that he has been great for the Second Amendment. In fact, I would say that he's been very, very extremely damaging. Phil, I know you've got a lot to say, and you're about ready to explode. Go ahead.
Remind me, Sean, because I had a couple of sharp blows to the head when I was younger, so my memory's not what it used to. But when Trump first came into office a while ago, wasn't there a time period when the Republicans held the White House and both houses of Congress?
Yes.
Okay. And did we see nationwide reciprocity get passed?
No.
Did we see constitutional carry get passed?
Negative.
So what?
We got bump stock bans.
Woohoo! Trump is full of crap.
Guys, we did not practice that.
Who cares about bump stock anyway?
The people he's playing 5D chess with are freaking conservatives.
Yeah.
And look, I will freely admit, I voted for the guy the first time around. He's not getting my vote twice because I'm a single issue voter. I'm a gun rights voter.
I just said tonight. Yeah.
Look, show me a Democrat that wants socialism across the board, but he's ready to freaking put his foot down about the Second Amendment and say, you can have all the damn guns and rocket launchers you want, have a party. I will vote for him just one time, just because I want to see it happen. I've become a single issue voter because it's the most important issue in my life at this point. And on that single issue, Trump failed.
Damn it. It is. You go ahead. I'm sorry.
He had a period of time where he could have done tremendous, amazing, great things for the Second Amendment. And damn party lines and damn the opposition. Shove it through, ram it down their throats, constitutional carry all the way. Shred every federal gun law there is and let the people scream and cry in the streets about it because this is the way it should be and it should have always been. And if he'd have done that, I'd have voted for him again. But he didn't. He actually did the opposite of that.
So
he's sitting in front of news cameras telling people take the guns and due process later. Are you freaking insane?
I was just
you're talking about trampling the Second Amendment. You're talking about trampling people's right to due process in commending that.
Yes. So I just want to say on We Like Shooting, I said, I am a single issue voter now. That's it. And Aaron was extremely incredulous. He's like, what? I was like, yep, single issue voter. That's it. Period. Nothing else. But I will also say that I live in the real world where I understand that if you don't vote for the top two parties at this point, this is my opinion, just based on what I've seen, that if you don't vote for one of those candidates, you're basically throwing your vote away. And do not mistake that for me falling prey to the mainstream media, because I have thrown away my vote many times. Gary Johnson, the first time, not the second, because he went insane. I have thrown my vote away more than most people my age.
But see, here's my concern with all that. First of all, if voting really made that much of a difference, I'm beginning to doubt whether or not they would let us vote. And second of all, trying to think of a way to put this, right? I don't sound like a completely unhinged lunatic. The God's honest truth at this stage of things is I'm perfectly okay pulling back from the political process because I don't think it works. It doesn't matter which lever you pull if you get equally bad results. 8 years of Barack Obama, we got no new gun control passed. 3 years of Trump, we got new gun control. So I'm judging the situation based on history. It doesn't matter which lever you pull anymore. If the Republican gives us more gun control than the Democrats do, then I'm going to suggest nothing unites the gun community like a villain. And I'd rather have another Democrat in office who scares the hell out of people. Because look what's happening in Virginia right now, which we're going to get to. I know I'm jumping ahead, but look what's happening in Virginia right now. People are friggin' turning out in droves. First-time Second Amendment advocates are showing up at state capitol. They're writing letters to congressmen. They're scared and they're pissed off, and they are raising hell about it. People who have not been you and me are jumping into this fight. And their moms and pops and PTA and people that attend PTA meetings or people that teach Little League. I mean, they coach Little League games. They're average Americans that have gone ballistic because they are sick and tired of this and they're scared. And I'm going to tell you right now that when we have a Democrat in office who's screaming, I'm going to take your guns, we get better results than when we have Trump.
I'm going to take a line from the newest Star Wars movie, and they win by making you think that you're alone. You just said you might even withdraw from the political process. And I think that sense of kind of abandonment of everything you believe in, like I totally agree. I am not going to withdraw, and I'm also not going to vote for third party anymore, at least for the time being. I'm not saying that I may not change my mind in the future because, look, we may feel disenfranchised and like no one stands for what we actually believe in. But at the same time, I have a lot of friends that are very liberal. Genevieve, you said that a lot of your family is extremely liberal, right? Are they going to stay away from the voting booths because they're disenfranchised and they don't believe that it matters?
I've never talked about this stuff publicly. Phil, you said you sound like a lunatic. If I start going down this rabbit hole, I'm really going to get a lot of hate from probably everybody watching this show. Everything that you've said, Phil, I agree with 100%. And I've felt that way for a very long time. Oh, fuck it. I'm just going to say it. Oh, I just said about it. Sorry, Sean.
Yes! It's okay. Kenny has that in it.
I have never voted. I don't think it does anything. I really, really, really believe that it is an illusion of control. And I don't think that it makes a difference one way or the other. And I don't actually think that I'm in control of anything that I can't have eyes on or ears on or making any actual decisions for. So I'm going to do what I can on my end, as much as I can control. And that's not something that I believe is a little bit of my conspiracy theorist coming out here, but that's not something that I believe actually does anything. I don't think our votes matter. I think that whoever is supposed to be in office for the government to benefit is who's going to be in office. I mean, I don't trust them. So
I will say this, that a lot of my liberal friends, like I have lots of friends who despise guns and gun owners and Trump, and they have Trump derangement syndrome. And honestly, I didn't become friends with them over politics. I became friends with them for other reasons. So we can agree to disagree on those things. But I promise you that when Trump won office, I messaged every one of them and I said, hey, I canceled out your vote just because I'm a troll. And I think that that's fine. I get how you guys feel. I absolutely do. But at the end of the day, if I can talk to one of my liberal friends who voted for Hillary or Bernie or something else and be like, hey, I canceled out your vote. Now what? Then
honestly, that's the best reason for voting I've ever heard.
Absolutely. Right. Try that. Go to the people who are anti-gun that and tell them and truthfully tell them, I canceled out your vote. I went to the voting booth and I canceled you out. You're welcome. Let's move on and have a beer or talk about whatever made us friends in the first place. If that's what it takes, I'm totally fine with it. Bill?
At the same time, I look at the situation this way. I also, like I've said, I don't believe that we can vote our way out of this problem at this point. My podcast is not a gun rights show, even though we are very pro-gun. It's more of we're into prepping, we're into libertarianism, small government, individual rights, situational awareness, self-defense, so on and so forth. And we wind up crossing into pro-Second Amendment stuff because of all those subjects. But at the end of the day, I look at the situation like this. If I can reach one person who wasn't a prepper, who wasn't in self-defense, who didn't have a concealed carry permit, who didn't own a gun, and I can get them on that path to being able to take care of themselves, look out for themselves, and be able to defend themselves, I win. I can throw that vote at in the ballot box, and I don't think it's going to do any daggone good. But if I can reach somebody and I can turn the way they think, I win. I'm like at this point, we podcasters, social media people, we influencers, we're like a freaking virus because we can infect those people who don't think the way we do and maybe reach them and turn the way they think. And if we can do that 1 time, 10 times, 100 times, 1,000 times, that's more important to me than going to throw in a vote in a ballot box. If I can take 1,000 people and make them think the way I do, that's 1,000 more people that are not going to be ready to surrender their rights without a fight. That's how we win this. We win hearts and minds.
I think that's extremely well put. Zach in the chat said, I think we need to encourage more to vote third party. Like Republicans and Democrats give zero for rights. You're not wrong, dude. I have voted. Like I said, I've thrown my vote away many times. But let's also not forget that in 2016, Gary Johnson got 3.27% of the vote. And I think when we talk about popular vote and what the margin by which Trump won by, what if those 3.27% did vote for Trump? I'm not saying I agree. I'm not saying that's what you should do. I'm just saying think about those numbers. Like, trust me, throwing my vote away so many times, totally comfortable with it. When I voted for Trump, I basically did it to troll my liberal friends and honestly to burn the system down because the system doesn't work. And I think the system's getting burnt down to a point for sure. Was it what I wanted and hoped for? Maybe not.
Further up in the comments, Kyle made the comment that Trump lost by less than 3,000 votes in New Hampshire. And to the point I just made, what's going to do more damage to people's ability to trample on the rights of others? 3,000 votes for a political party or 3,000 people that are willing to put their foot down and say, no, you will not do this? 3,000 people ready to join hands and form a ring around the state capitol so no one can go into the building without having to trample over those people. 3,000 people ready to stand around a person who has done no wrong but has broken some meaningless BS victimless crime law and say, no, you will not take this person into custody because they've done no harm. 3,000 people in this country is something you cannot ignore. It's not something you can just run roughshod over. You have to pay attention when 3,000 people get out in the street and say, I will not have my rights taken from me. 30,000 is even better. No. But we got to reach them. We got to make them understand that this is the way to do this. And I'm not saying that, we need to be out kicking over trash cans and raising hell, but I mean, we have to make them understand that the path forward to everyone's rights being respected is to demand that they be respected. And we're not doing that by making political donations and voting at the ballot box. It's not working.
This was an awesome discussion, but we've got a lot more stories to I love it. That's one of the reasons that I actually do like doing the show is because we get to talk about stuff like that. And I'm like, I have 50 stories to cover. If we cover 10, great. If we cover 4, even better, because we're talking about it and we're passionate about it. And man, I really enjoyed that. This next one's a quick one. CNN settles with Nick Sandmann in a $275 million lawsuit. You may actually remember Nick Sandmann because everyone's seen his face. You would refer to him as smug Catholic boy wearing a MAGA hat, taunting a Native American. You guys remember this guy? Let me.
It might be more Native American than Elizabeth Warren, but that ain't setting the bar very high.
No, it was the white kid at a protest, and there was a Native American, and the kid had this, like the smug smile on his face. I'll throw it up on the screen here real quick just to remind everybody who's watching. That kid, we remember that kid? He actually he won this settlement. It was a $275 million lawsuit. They haven't actually said how much he actually won, but I think it's actually a very interesting thing that happened. There was an independent investigation undertaken by the Catholic Diocese of Covington. They cleared the boys of any wrongdoing. It turned out that if you watched it in context, that the kid turned out like he was just standing there. He wasn't doing anything. And the Native American guy was in his face being a complete douchebag. They were completely cleared of it. Some of the news outlets apologized. Some of them didn't. But this has opened up. There's still lawsuits against Washington Post and NBC Universal. and Gannett, the parent company, which owns USA Today and several local newspapers. This is fantastic. This, to me, it's kind of like the McDonald's coffee thing. A lot of people heard about the lady who got her crotch burned by McDonald's coffee, and they're like, oh my God, this is ridiculous. What kind of world do we live in? Turns out that McDonald's was actually wrong 1,000%, and that they had nuclear coffee, and that she suffered like life-altering burns to her crotch, and it was fine. And this is kind of the exact same thing. You're like, oh, that kid looks like a douchebag. But when you realize, when you look at it in the context of the event and the moment in which it happened, that he was completely just there doing a thing, and it wasn't a bad thing at all. And he wasn't a bad kid, and he wasn't being a jerk, and he wasn't being disrespectful in any way. Genevieve, it's tough. The mainstream media so often presents things in a specific way, and this is a perfect example. And now they're paying for it. What do you think about the whole story?
I really hope that it deters them from publishing fake news in the future, or at least thinking twice about it before they do. I mean, it's a lot of money. So you would hope that it would make them double check what they're doing. I think it's great that he won. I was really surprised by that, actually. I didn't think that that's something that could be pulled off. I mean, suing modern media, that's crazy. But I mean, it's good. And it's crazy how disrespectful people are to Trump supporters just for wearing a MAGA hat. Like, that's not the only story that was like that. A lot of people were getting beat in the street just for supporting Trump. And it was sad. It was crazy. So I'm happy for him. I'm glad he won.
Yeah. So his attorney said that CNN ignored the facts and waged a 7-day media campaign of false, vicious attacks against him, a young boy who was guilty of little more than wearing a souvenir Make America Great Again cap. I don't think it was all that, but I mean, the hate that I saw online for this young man was stunning. Bill?
Well, I mean, to me, at the end of the day, I really don't care that somebody was rude to this kid over a MAGA hat. I mean, I actually enjoy and appreciate uncivil conversations frequently, because I find that very often a little bit of confrontation is healthy for a conversation. What I do disapprove of, though, is the fact that this is a defamation suit. Like, this young man had things said about him in the media that were absolutely untrue, and I'm glad that there was legal remedy for that. This happened as it should have. What I'm not happy about is the amount. $275 million for a media giant? Seriously?
And honestly, that's what he sued for. That's not what he got. They did settle out of court. Izzy just said he didn't win. CNN and the kids' lawyers have settled out of court. I thought that I said that. If I wasn't clear, it was a settlement. So it was a portion of that. And he's suing other places. But still, he became a millionaire. I guarantee it.
Okay, but again, unless the amount's enough that it actually invokes some pain upon this media giant, I don't think anything's going to change. And I don't see this as a victory. I think I am that person that says anything you do that doesn't cause injury is cool. Like, you want to commit suicide, I don't agree with it, but do your thing. You want to smoke crack. You want to friggin' run around naked, as long as I don't see it, I don't care. The moment you cause injury, I do believe a person should be held ultimately responsible. And when a media giant causes injury like they've destroyed this young man's reputation. They've made false allegations about him. They should absolutely be called to the carpet, and they should be penalized for that. But the penalty has to hurt. If you go 20 miles an hour the speed limit, you get $1 speeding ticket. Guess what you're going to do the minute the cop lets you go? You're going to put the foot to the floor and go do it again, because it's $1. $275 million. If it's even a portion of it, let's say it's 10%. It doesn't matter unless you make it hurt. So I guess my point of view is I'm glad the kid got the settlement. Thank God the courts kind of still work the way they're supposed to, but I think the amount should have been a lot more. I think it should have been punitive. It should have hurt. Yeah. That's the only way this is going to stop is if if mainstream media is made to feel pain when they make when they do these sorts of things.
Yeah, and I agree. It's not going to change anything. In the grand scheme of things, this is very small. It's not going to injure them CNN at all.
They're not even going to know.
I had no concept, so I'm like, wow, that's a ton of money. Like, that's got to make some kind of a difference, right? I have no concept of like how much they're worth. It's now that you say it, it's probably much more than that. So
but that's like when Big Pharma gets fined like $20 million because a drug they put out into the they put out into the ecosystem, trying out to make people grow a third eyeball and freaking develop yellow, purplish skin and all kinds of weird stuff. $20 million for a big pharma company. They giggle at that. They budget that into their price in case it screws somebody up.
Actually true. Yeah. So in a macro level, I'm happy for this kid because I have not seen many besmirched in the way in which he was. And so in a complete omniscient view, very small, in the life of this kid who had himself trashed online for months, definitely a victory. Let's talk about Iran. There's an entire history back here, but let's just cover some of the things since last episode. U.S. embassy in Iraq kind of overrun a bit. Could have been another Benghazi, wasn't another Benghazi. Basically, Trump pushed a lot of people there, and we did. I don't know if we learned lessons from Benghazi or we just have much better leadership in this administration. That remains to be seen. And people can decide that for themselves. As a retaliation, Trump authorizes drone strikes without congressional approval against enemy forces at an Iraq airport, happens to kill an Iranian general. I don't know his name. I see it in the article. I don't care what his name was. Doesn't matter to me in the least. He is dead. Iran is upset. Millions showing up at the funeral, screaming death to America. More people died in trampling incidents at the funeral, by the way, than died in the drone attack. And now we see things like New York City on high alert amid tension between U.S. and Iran. Some suspect that Iranian sleeper cells may be activated in the U.S., which I think is a very interesting thing. That article actually comes to us from law enforcement today. Former Secret Service CIA officer issues warning, prepare for Iran sleeper cells to strike rural America. It is a disaster. And Genevieve, I want to start with you here because you were actually talking about something that you had read that you wanted to bring up.
Yeah, I actually saw something on Reddit, and this came after Iran, I think, launched missiles at U.S. bases in Iran, and no U.S. soldiers were harmed or anything like that. But this isn't that long. I'll read it as quick as I can. It reads, I'm an American field grade officer in redacted. Some of this is redacted, apparently, and would like to calm things down a bit concerning the Iranian missile strike. Number one, we received intelligence reports that there would be a missile strike that night in 2 volleys. We didn't know the hour or location, but there were in fact 2 volleys. Field intelligence is never that accurate in my experience. Number 2, the first volley launched within minutes of us receiving the intelligence report. Number 3, I watched the rockets impact mostly ineffectively on a live feed. Number 4, President Trump tweeted that there were no American casualties and little damage before we even received the battle damage assessment, but he was right. 5, Iran, Iraq, and President Trump were all talking about de-escalation within hours of the strike. So this person's conclusion is, the whole night I couldn't escape the feeling that the whole thing is intended to give President Trump a reason to remove troops from Iraq while giving all 3 parties, Iran, Iraq, and the USA, to win. The USA killed a very bad man, Iran struck the Great Satan, and Iraq gets to reassert their sovereignty. So he thinks that the whole thing was orchestrated between the 3 governments, basically. And I just thought that was interesting. I don't know a whole lot about military operations at all, so I feel like I can't even form an opinion on that one way or the other, but I was really curious to hear what you guys thought of that.
Yeah, one of my buddies messaged me last night. He's like, World War III just started. And I was like, what? It was date night. We were out having fun. Came back and read a couple things. And then he and I had texted back and forth just a little bit. And I was like, how many casualties? And he's like, I don't know. It's kind of spotty at this point. And I was like, if it's 0, dude, this is totally just Iran getting some face service for their people who are pretty angry about it. And basically proving that they're not losers by being losers. Phil, what are your thoughts here?
On the one hand, I want to look at this whole thing and say that's a whole bunch of tinfoil hat to think this was this is like all shadow government stuff. But on the other hand, You don't have to read WikiLeaks very much to really get the impression that there are organizations that may or may not be connected to our government, have been for a very long time, that are absolutely capable of pulling something like this off. And the fact that like you get that accurate of intelligence passed backwards and forwards out the field that fast, that's interesting.
Never happens.
Look, the people on the ground didn't know that fast what happened. I know I was enlisted a long time ago when I was like, lots of years younger and about 70 pounds lighter. But the guys on the ground don't know that fast what happened. Like how many rockets hit, how many volleys, how many people were injured. I mean, you're lucky if you don't have 4 privates running around butt naked screaming at each other in a situation like that where there's an incoming mortar or rocket attack. So the fact that that intelligence passed backwards out of the field that fast, that's interesting. The fact that intelligence came in and then a minute later the rocket attack hit, that could be coincidence. It's a hell of a coincidence, but it could be a benefit of the doubt on that one.
The weird part to me was Trump tweeting before they even got the battle. It's like that was the weirdest part to me, and I don't even really know anything, but that seemed really off.
Okay, that is the equivalent of me walking into your house unannounced, throwing a fistful of change on your kitchen floor, turning around, and before you even had a chance to bend over to count the first coin, me telling you exactly how much is in that pile of change I just threw on your kitchen floor unannounced.
It's a great analogy.
It really is.
Do you think that I saw it in midair and counted it, that I'm an idiot savant, or do you think I might have known before I dropped it? I'm just saying it could be coincidence. That's a hell of a coincidence if that's what happened. The things about this that really make my blood pressure go, because I mean, oh, Jesus Christ. Bear in mind that I'm a pretty hardcore constitutionalist. I don't like the idea that our president has war power the power to go to war without congressional approval on tap. That makes me really nervous for lots of really good reasons. The office was never supposed to have the power to do that. By the way, that's kind of a leftover from like World War II when we invested all the power to start nuclear war in the White House, which is another thing that I'm back and forth on. But the idea that the White House can authorize drone strikes and missiles just without any kind of congressional approval gives me concern. It doesn't even matter if it was used against the worst human being on the face of the earth. The guy was probably a dirtbag, and he's probably burning in hell right now, and we can all rejoice about that because nothing I've read leads me to believe this was a nice guy. Probably but it's not often what gets done, but how it gets done that gets me really riled up. Like, because I look at the Constitution, because I look at the laws and how this country was supposed to be set up, the fact that decision was made around Congress is unnerving to me. And if it's not unnerving to you because you're a Trumper and Trump can do no wrong, 5D chess, blah, 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 blah. If that's your bend, then understand why I'm so nervous about that. Don't ever be concerned about the power invested in the hands of somebody you trust. Be worried about the fact that power goes with the office, not the person. So if you let Trump shoot a rocket or a missile or a drone into another country without congressional approval, you were giving the exact same power to Hillary Clinton, to Bernie Sanders, to Barack Obama, to every president that comes after him. It doesn't matter if you agree with what happened or not. What you should be concerned about is the fact that we've given this power to an office that's going to be used. And one day it's going to be used by somebody that scares the hell out of you. Or we can all embrace the idea that these things should require congressional approval, even though Congress is really dysfunctional. I admit that, but it's the way it's supposed to be done because it's check and balance. It's really idealistic stuff, but it's how the country is supposed to work. All that being said, my personal beliefs on war, and a lot of this is derived from having been in one before, I don't like the idea of just like a drone strike here, a missile strike there. I kind of think that if we have good justification for attacking Iran, let's go in, let's turn it into a parking lot, let's be freaking done with it, let's take everybody and bring them home and leave. I don't like this. I don't like limited war. I don't like this idea that we put a couple troops here, we put a little special group here, we send a rocket, we send a drone. We lose more people screwing around with these people than if we either said to hell with them and left them alone or went in and ripped the Band-Aid off.
Yeah. So I heard a lot of people talking about the draft because apparently that's the thing that people are concerned about these days. And I think I'm over the age where I could actually be drafted, but I'm like, hey, what if I show them that Washington Post article that says I'm a millennial? Because then, that's mainstream media. Maybe they'll be down. I don't know. We'll kind of see where this goes. it is an interesting time. A couple other things that we didn't mention yet is a passenger plane in Iran. It was a Ukrainian flight, went down right under 180 people perished in that flight, and an earthquake happened right next to an Iranian nuclear plant. I mean, I don't have a tinfoil hat, but I'm kind of thinking I might want to get one.
Join the team, buddy.
I'm like, the more I do this show, I'm like, I am a conspiracy theorist. I never was in my whole life. But you know what? This show has made me one. I don't just reading the stuff and seeing the patterns and things like that. Speaking of patterns, the last thing I want to talk about is Virginia again, because it's a crazy time there. And they actually just introduced House Bill 567, indoor shooting ranges prohibited in buildings not owned or leased by the Commonwealth. That's right. The Commonwealth of Virginia. They are now saying that they want to shut down every single gun range in the state that's not owned or at least run in a building owned or leased by the government of Virginia. Like, what? It would prohibit the operation of an indoor shooting range defined in the bill in any buildings not owned or leased by the Commonwealth or federal government. For those that would be staying open, the state wants them to act as a data collection operation, creating a state-controlled list of who is using the range as well as their photo ID and home address. What the hell? This is insane. Genevieve, like, how in the world? This is draconian. This is 1984. This is Orwellian. Like, what?
I didn't know about that last part. Oh my gosh.
It's ridiculous. I don't understand.
That's horrible. Like, that's really bad.
Mm-hmm.
That's really bad. Yeah, I mean, all of it is really stupid too, because the people who are gonna have guns are gonna have guns, and they're gonna find a way to practice. I mean, I totally can't remember what they're called right now, but John and I are talking about getting one when we move into our new house. It's like basically like a huge rubber thing that you can shoot, and it can withstand up to like a 500 Magnum.
Yeah, like a trap.
Yeah. Get some of those, throw them in your basement, like, I don't understand what they think this is going to stop or prevent or help. It's like every other gun law. It doesn't make sense. And it's just going to hurt law-abiding citizens and treat them like criminals when they haven't done anything wrong. And it's going to ruin families for doing nothing.
I know. I mean, this is crazy to me. This is like, hey, if it's not state controlled, this is communism. This is, I don't even know where to go with this, because they're always saying, look, we're not trying to take your guns. We just want common sense gun control. But Virginia, they have gone full retard. They want to take everything. They don't want you to own guns. This is tyrannical government, unchecked, in a state that has started two revolutions, Phil. I don't even know what to say about this. This one, I was like, okay, yeah, we knew this was coming. They're not even trying to hide it anymore.
I do have to disagree respectfully with one thing. This law is going to do something. What it's going to do is be a further burden upon gun owners to legally exercise their right, which is exactly the intent. Let's be honest here. I don't think Johnny B. Gangbanger, who's selling pot behind the friggin' gun range, is going inside to practice. He does that every Saturday night, shooting his competitors. So I don't see no one is under any illusions that this is going to actually prevent crime or decrease gun violence. That's bull. This is purely 110% to be a further burden upon gun owners, and it's going to do that, and it's exactly what it's designed to do. So let's just be honest about it. That's what's happening. And then this whole other component about how they're collecting data on who's using them. I mean, do I even have to say it, or can y'all fill in the blanks without me sounding like a total conspiracy theorist? Like, this is backdoor registration at its best, and they're not even hiding it anymore. It's amazing. This is awesome.
Yeah, they are not trying to hide.
They're not trying to hide it anymore.
Questions about it. Is it private ranges? Go read it. It's HB 567. It's the 2020 session of the Virginia House. And I mean, I could read like the text that I see here. Prohibits the operation of an indoor shooting range defined in the bill in any building not owned or leased by the Commonwealth or federal government unless fewer than 50 employees work in the building, or at least 90% of the users of the indoor shooting range are law enforcement officers or federal law enforcement officers. The indoor shooting range maintains a log of each user's name, phone number, address, and the law enforcement agency where such a user is employed. And the shooting range verifies each user's identity and address by requiring all users to present a government-issued photo identification card. The bill provides that any person that violates the provisions of this sanction is subject to a civil penalty of not less than $1,000, not more than $100,000 for the initial violation, and $5,000 per day for each day of violation thereafter. This is tyranny. This is tyranny.
This is awesome.
This is tyranny.
It's awesome.
They ran out of hex.
There are all out of F's to give.
I used my one F word already. I can't say it again.
I exhausted all mine for several episodes, which is why I've been on such good behavior. But I mean, the truth of the matter is that this is not surprising, and there's no illusions about what this is. This is designed to discourage gun owners from exercising their right, and it's very plain and out in the open and very obvious. So I guess at the end of the day, my question is there any other private industry in which the government runs roughshod over and says you cannot operate in this space unless it's a government facility?
Yeah. Ridiculous.
Is there any? Because if not, that's a hell of an argument for lack of equal protection under the law. And I'd love to see a constitutional challenge to this. Although that being said, I've also said that, you know, the fact that they can pass a law they can take a pen, and I don't have a pen. Oh yeah, I do have a pen as a prop. See, they can take one of these and they can write some crap down on a piece of paper and sign their names to it and strip our rights from us under penalty of either violence, imprisonment, death, or theft.
Colorado.
That's what fines are, and that's what jail time is you're being imprisoned against your will, your money's being taken from you, or you get killed if you disagree with the crown. That's how all this works, peeps. And they can do that with this. And then we have to spend days and weeks and months of our time and tens of thousands of dollars in lawyer fees to try to get that right back that they took from us with this. And that's why this isn't working.
Yeah. It's a disaster. Like, I don't know what's going on in Virginia. It gets crazier every single day. That's all the time we have for the news stories today. As always, I want to hear what you guys are up to and where people can find you. Genevieve, I'll start with you. What's new? You're going to SHOT Show?
I am. We're actually driving there, so it's going to be a cross-country trip, and it's going to be super fun. We're going to vlog it on the Gun Collective and on my Instagram, Beyond the Unknown. So check that out if you want. If you're going to be at SHOT Show, say hi if you see us. Other than that, Hold My Guns. We're still doing our thing there. You can go to holdmyguns.com to find more information on that. We'll also be at SHOT Show for that as well. So, you know, not much is new, but SHOT Show is coming up. So that's been busy.
No doubt. Because you manage a lot of the scheduling and stuff for that, right?
I do all the scheduling.
Yeah, all of it.
And Izzy can attest to this because I give everyone lunch breaks because I'm a more generous God than John, apparently. No.
Yeah. That's wonderful. So my favorite thing about SHOT Show is that Izzy is working his butt off in the press room, and Aaron and I, without fail, at least once a day, go up to the press room and bring Izzy a Coke, just to give him refreshment for the slaving that he is doing for John and the Gun Collective. I'm so glad to hear that we have a more benevolent leader now.
Oh, thank you very much. I try my hardest. But no, seriously, Izzy works harder than anybody else at SHOT that I've ever seen. So thank you, Izzy.
No, I love it. Can't wait to see you guys and talk to you. It's always, you know what? I'm not even upset about SHOT Show this year. Normally I'm like, I don't want to go. This year, I'm so freaking excited. I cannot wait. I'm stoked. Phil, how about you? What's new? Where can people find you?
Nothing's really new. Just doing more of the show. Just doing more of the Matter of Facts podcast. Comes out every Friday on Stitcher, Spotify, and iTunes, and probably other places I can't remember. But we have an Instagram. We're on Instagram. We're on Facebook. We're just still punching out that weekly show every Friday, talking about prepping, survival, self-defense, guns, libertarian stuff every now and then. We kind of been branching out, looking at other little avenues for content, just trying to keep the show fresh. But other than that, it's just been more of the same. One of these days, I'll get the sequel to American Insurgent done, but I'm still working on it.
I've been recommending that book so often lately. I'm like, hey, you want to know what it's like for the Boogaloo? Go read this book.
I tell you what, I actually, right after I was on the show last time, I discounted that book down, I think like $1, and then posted everywhere saying, hey, buy a copy for your friends in Virginia.
Yeah, no, seriously. I have recommended that book no less than probably 10 times in the last 60 days. Just because, seriously, you want to know what the Boogaloo might be like? This is a pretty good imagining of what it may be like. Which is a sad state of affairs.
Before. I said I've never been called imaginative before. Thanks, Sean.
You're welcome. All right, guys, that'll do it for the show tonight. Thank you so much to everybody for listening. Go check out our advertisers, the Patriot Patch Company at patriotpatch.co, and also Second Call Defense at firearmsradio.tv/SCD. Go check out Genevieve and all the great stuff that she's doing, especially Hold My Guns, the Gun Collective, all that great stuff, Beyond the Unknown. Go check out Phil Matter of Fact's podcast, as well as American Insurgent, which is available on Amazon, both in audiobook and the regular book. Don't forget that this show is produced by Kenny Ortega and Ben Allreed and is a production of the Firearms Radio Network. Thank you so much for all the support, and we will talk to you all next week.